So here we go. We're going to do the minestrone soup here in my heavy Le Creuset soup pan. If you follow me, you know that I'm 100% plant-based. I don't cook with any added salt, oil, or sugar, and I'm also gluten-free. And that goes for all the recipes in my cookbook as well. So since I don't use oil, I just put a little bit of water in the bottom of the pan there, and that just lets me know when the pan gets nice and hot. It's not really a good idea to just leave a pan heating with nothing in it. So I use water, and I always have a little cup of water nearby. If you prefer to use vegetable stock, you can do that too. I just use water because by the time everything's cooking and I put all the produce in and the dried herbs and spices, it tastes amazing. So I don't really buy vegetable stock, and I don't really make it either. But if you want to, you can. All right, so it's nice and bubbling there. And I'm going to add, this is one onion. This is like one medium largish onion, chopped. And it's a yellow onion. You could use a white onion or a red, it doesn't really matter. Or maybe a white or a yellow. So it looks more traditional. And I've got this on kind of medium heat. This pan is super heavy, so it holds heat really well. It conducts heat really well. So I don't need it on the highest setting. Now you can choose to add a little bit more water as we're going on, or you can do dry saute, which is what I'm doing here. And you can see it's getting a little bit brown there, so I could turn the heat down, or I could just add a little bit of water. But as the vegetables cook, the water inside gets released. So we don't really want to boil these, or steam them. We want to saute them, which means with zero or as little water as possible, just so we're not burning, it's not sticking, and that will bring out the most flavor. Okay. All right. So while that's getting going, I'm going to put in some fennel, and that's what this big fluffy thing is. This is fresh fennel. And if you don't have fresh fennel, you don't want to use it, you can also use celery. And I'm just going to put a little water in here since I'm not going to be stirring for a minute and I don't want it to burn. So this is common in grocery stores, and what you do, I cut these off, these little fronds. They are edible, although I've never seen a recipe that they're used in, so I should research that. But what we want is the bulb. And this tastes a little bit like anise, black licorice, a little, which sounds weird, but it's really good. And once it cooks a little, it mellows. And this is used in Italian cooking sometimes, and it's just really delightful. But again, if you can't find it, just use some celery instead. And then, let me get my, I don't know where it is. I was just going to say, if you, often on fennel, it will have like dirty looking marks on it. And since the leaves are very thick, you don't want to peel off the whole leaf and discard it. Just use your potato peeler to get those parts off. And mine is in the other room, so I'm not going to go get it. And what I'm aiming for here is just about 3/4 of a cup. So I'm going to cut this in half, and then I'm going to cut the end off. And then we'll just cut some of this here. It's very odd shaped, so be careful when you're chopping. It doesn't have to be uniformly chopped. Oh, it smells so good. And then maybe that little centerpiece I will leave out because it's extra hard. Okay. Sometimes you'll find this at the grocery store that has the dark green frilly stuff already cut off of it. And that's okay. But whenever you find things with the green fluffy stuff on the end still attached, like beets or carrots or fennel, that just tells you that it's fresher than the stuff that has had the green stuff taken off. So if I do find stuff at the grocery store that has that green stuff on the end, that's what I choose over the stuff that doesn't, because I know it will be fresher. Okay. So I'm going to say that looks like about 3/4 of a cup. We're going to add that in. Give it a stir. Okay. And then we're also going to add in some fennel seeds, 1 teaspoon of fennel seeds. You can find those pretty easily at spice shops and grocery stores, I think. So these are whole fennel seeds, and just a little bit. But they really make the soup. At the end when you're eating it, you get a little fennel seed. Ooh, it's so good. So, so good. Again, if you don't have the fennel seed, make it anyway. It'll still be great. This is some red chili peppers. These are spicy. I like a little bit spicy, so I'm going to add just a 1/4 teaspoon in. You can add a 1/4 teaspoon, a 1/2 teaspoon, whatever works for you. Or, excuse me, or none at all if you don't like spicy stuff. When we put heat on those dried things, it kind of gives them a burst of flavor. So that's why we're adding them now instead of later when the water and the diced tomatoes and all that stuff are in. Okay. And then we're also going to add in some garlic, about a tablespoon. And again, I'm using my favorite little garlic chopper. This is a Tupperware tool. It is on my store at my website, straightupfood.com, if you're interested. And it's just a little container with a little blade, and I have a few cloves of garlic in there that I've already taken the little annoying paper off with my garlic peeler here. You just put it inside and roll it, and it separates that paper from the clove. And then you just line up the little sections, and then you just pull. And the more you pull, the finer it gets chopped. I love, love, love this thing. Okay, where's my, there it is. So I'm not going to measure this out. I'm just going to eyeball it. I've chopped enough garlic to know what 1 tablespoon kind of looks like. And if there's a little extra, that's okay. And we usually add garlic in a little bit later because it's a little more delicate than onions. It can burn easily, so it's often just added toward the end of this saute period. Okay. Smells good. All right. So that is 6 cups of water. Okay. So 6 cups of water. Then we're going to add 2 cans of diced tomatoes, or if your diced tomatoes come in another form, a jar or something, you can use those. If you want to use fresh tomatoes, I've never done it, but you could probably do that as well. I'm using the Muir Glen organic diced tomatoes, no salt added. So that's 1 15-ounce can, 14.5-ounce can. There's another 14.5-ounce can. And then we're going to add some white potatoes. These are russet potatoes. You could use Yukon Gold white potatoes. It doesn't really matter. And I've peeled and then cut these into little chunks. So we're going to add those. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat up a little, so this can get boiling. You could use red potatoes. You could cut your potatoes chunkier if you want. I cut mine a little on the smaller side just because I'm doing a class and I wanted to get done a little sooner. Then we're going to add 2 carrots-ish. So there's some carrots. And we're going to add some kidney beans, some mushrooms, and some zucchini. Now in the instructions I say add the mushrooms and the zucchini a little bit later so they don't get overcooked because they're a little more delicate than these things. But I'm just going to go ahead and add them because I want everything to hurry up and get done by the time I'm done with the class. So this is 1 can of kidney beans, and I just used the Westbury Natural Organic Kidney Beans, no salt added. or you can make beans from scratch on your own if you like. So these are rinsed. And then the zucchini, just I've cut into little half moons there. And then some mushrooms. Now I know there's at least one of you out there who doesn't like mushrooms, so just leave them out. It'll still be delicious. And these are the mushrooms that I'm using today. The white mushrooms, when I went shopping, they didn't have very many of the brown creminis, which is what I usually use, but white mushrooms are totally fine. And if the ends are kind of funky, I usually just cut a little slice off, but this one looks pretty good, so I'm gonna leave that. And then what I do is I just cut it in half, and then I turn it to the side, and I cut a few times. I love mushrooms. I'm always trying to put them into anything I can find. Isn't that pretty? And this makes a lot of soup. So you'll be eating this for a few days. You could freeze some. Soups and stews freeze really, really well. So if you don't like to cook, get into making one-pot meals or soups and stews. Keep some out to eat, put some in the freezer, label it with some masking tape, what it is, put the date on it. And usually anything in the freezer like that, I would like to eat, you know, within 3 months. Okay, so we've got all that. All right, so the last 3 ingredients are some fresh basil, some fresh parsley, and some pasta, which is optional. Nowadays, I don't usually add the pasta all the time, but we're gonna do that today. So I will show you a little later what kind of pasta we're gonna use. And I'm gonna move this to the back here to finish cooking. So I will turn the heat on there. And then we'll add the basil and the parsley a little bit later, because if we were to add them now and this is boiling, getting totally hot, they would just get overcooked. They'd lose a lot of that great flavor and color. All right. All right. So let's finish up our minestrone soup here. And as I said earlier, the last 2 ingredients we're going to add is some fresh parsley. This is Italian parsley. You can use curly parsley if you want. And I've just roughly chopped that. And then this is some basil, which just makes minestrone soup. And I haven't cut it yet just because I want to show you real quick one method of chopping basil. This is what I learned somewhere long ago, is you kind of put it all in a stack. Because it's kind of flat, it's hard to chop, so we're going to make a little, what I've heard described as a little cigar out of it. So you put it all, and you put it, and then you have the big one on the outside, and then you kind of, like you're rolling a sushi roll, and then you roll it up, and now you have something to slice against. And I don't know how much I said of the fresh basil. I think a half cup. And then once I do that, I just go down the middle. And I like them kind of on the bigger side like this. But if you want to chop, you know, give a couple more chops, you can do that as well. That looks like about a half cup. All right, so let's get our soup back over. I just kind of poke some of the potatoes and the carrots to make sure they're nice and tender. These are, because I was blasting it back there to make sure it got done in time. So I'm just going to add in the parsley. See, that needed some green. And the basil. And I'm going to stir that in. Oh, you could add some black pepper. Let me do that. Or you could let people add their own black pepper, but I think it looks nice in the pot. Now, some people like to add tomato sauce or a little tomato paste to their minestrone soup to kind of thicken up that broth. You can totally do that if you want. I don't use tomato sauce a lot because it's harder to find. I don't know what I did with my cans. It's harder to find salt-free than it is the diced tomatoes for some reason. So early on, for that reason, I didn't want to use salt-free tomato sauce that only I could find, but a lot of other people couldn't find. But add it in if you want. Just be aware, tomato sauce usually is loaded with salt. So if you're trying to avoid salt, be careful. All right, so the last thing is we're gonna add some pasta. And I already cooked this pasta this morning. This is just some little shell pasta. This is optional. This is already quite hearty, even without the pasta. But if you do wanna go more traditional, which minestrone soup usually has a little pasta going. This is what I used, brown rice pasta shells. Tinchiata is the brand. And about 1.5 uncooked makes this amount. And what I will often do is just put some of the pasta, I'm gonna use my hands, I'm sorry, it's kind of sticking together, so it'll be a little easier if I just use my hands. And put a little pasta in the bottom and then put the soup over it. You can put the pasta in at this point. I have found, and maybe I'm doing it wrong, but if I put the pasta in, then I go to eat it tomorrow and the next day, the pasta gets a little waterlogged. So I just put it in the bottom of the dish and then I serve the soup over it. And your pasta will, I made mine a little earlier, but yours will have just been boiled, so it'll be nice and soft and hot. And then to garnish, which I didn't think to do today, you could just cut some extra basil, put it on the top, or put some black pepper on the top. Let's put a little more pepper on it there, just to make it look nice. So there is our completed minestrone soup.